All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here again. My name is Sebastian Wong. I'm the policy manager at Forefront. Thanks for being here today for our annual Deciphering GATA and related resources training. We have an amazing panel from folks from the Governor's Office of Management and Budget, as well as the amazing Lauren Wright from Illinois Partners for Human Services. So we'll go ahead and go on to the next slide, and I won't take up too much time. All right, well, here is Forefront. Forefront is Illinois' statewide association for nonprofits and grant makers. That was our team photo, but we are a statewide organization. We serve nonprofits and grant makers alike from Chicago all the way down to Carbondale, so we are a statewide team. You can see a little bit about what drives Forefront here on this slide. But ultimately, we try to aim to mobilize the sector, addressing any challenges that are impacting nonprofits and foundations alike across the state, and ensuring we also hold racial equity in our practices. We know that not every nonprofit is different or the same, and that every nonprofit, depending on where they're at, has different challenges that they're facing and populations that they're serving. So we try to ensure that our practices and our trainings like this one today are accessible to everyone and meet the moment. Next slide, please. We are a membership-based organization based on a sliding scale fee. So depending on how big your organization is sort of dependent on how big or how much your annual fee would cost to join Forefront. But these are some of the benefits that you can get from joining Forefront as a member. I won't get into them too much right now. That's not the purpose of today's training. But if there's any interest in joining Forefront as a member, feel free to reach out to us. We have a great, diverse team from librarians to our policy team that go to Springfield and to DC frequently and more. So just feel free to reach out if there are any questions on that. Next slide. And then additionally, we will drop some resources in the chat in a second for you all to be aware of. These are free resources for anyone to access. We have our biweekly newsletter, our philanthropy club for folks who want to get updates in that arena. We recently launched our Nonprofit Resilience Hub, which is a confidential resource for only nonprofits with an operating budget under $10 million, so more so the smaller nonprofits that have been impacted by federal actions and executive orders. So we just hired an amazing attorney who's been partnering with the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, the Chicago Bar Foundation, and BDO to sort of meet the moment and help uplift the work that our nonprofits are doing under current federal challenges. And as stated earlier, we also have a racial equity team and a public policy team, which I'm a part of. So feel free to reach out if there are any questions on how Forefront is addressing racial equity and the policies that we are working on in Springfield, but also in Washington, D.C. Next slide. And Forefront is the state association. We have some national associations that we are under. So that includes the National Council of Nonprofits, the United Philanthropy Forum, the Council on Foundations, and Independent Sector. Right now, with everything happening in DC and even in Congress, it's really helpful for us to get sort of updates in real time on what's happening in the legislative branch and executive branch in Washington. And we have these partners that help provide us updates. So if there are any questions on what's happening in Congress, especially this week and next week, they're very busy right now. Feel free to reach out to us and we can help answer any questions. And then we're also a member of the Health Human Services Coalition of Illinois, which you can see the various partners that we work with as well in that little box right there. And then some of our members include the Arts Alliance, the Illinois Environmental Council, just to name a couple that we work with quite frequently on things in our sector, but also on policy as well. And then I won't go into too much detail, but how Forefront drives our policy program. We have a board, a policy committee, and staff, and we go through a very regular process to ensure that our policies actually reflect the needs of our sector, of the challenges and the issues that folks bring to us, and that they're accurate of not just parts of Illinois, but the entire state as a whole. And primarily, we focus again on policies that impact the state and federal level, sometimes local, but more so things that happen in Springfield and DC. And then like this event, we host regular trainings and events that help to educate folks in our sector on how to get involved in policy, but also things that are in relations to government affairs. And with that, I will pass it on to Lauren from Illinois Partners for Human Services. And then if folks have any questions throughout this PowerPoint, feel free to drop them in the chat. But we will have time at the very end for folks to ask questions to Forefront, to Lauren, and to our amazing partners at the Governor's Office of Management and Budget. But Lauren, take it away.
Thanks, Sebastian. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you today. My name is Lauren Wright, and I'm Executive Director of Illinois Partners for Human Service. Illinois Partners is a statewide coalition of health and human service providers. We have about 850 organizations, and we have community-based partners in every legislative district in the state. And we're really grateful, as always, to partner with Forefront. We work very closely with Forefront on a number of different issues that impact nonprofits, that impact the health and human service sector. And GATA is one of those issues. Illinois Partners, I've been in my role for about 7 years, but Illinois Partners has been working on troubleshooting and implementation issues related to the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act quite, I think, literally since its inception. And so this is an issue we know impacts community-based providers across the state. And we're really grateful for our partnership with the governor's office and the team at GATU in ensuring that GATA is accessible, particularly to small community-based providers who may not have all the infrastructure needed to comply with requirements to partner with the state. And we know that this is an equity and access issue for communities across the state. We want to make sure that the state and community-based providers are able to work together collaboratively to ensure that we're carrying out the services that our communities need. And so over the past legislative session, we worked very closely with Forefront and the Governor's Office of Management and Budget to pass the Community Partner Fair Contracting Act that was signed by Governor Pritzker last week into law, which is really exciting. And that for us is a first step in making sure that we have transparent processes around GATA, that we ensure that the areas that are causing the most difficulty for providers are addressed specifically, and that we can work collaboratively to continue to troubleshoot issues as they arise. And so this training and the fact that Forefront holds it annually is one step in that process and making sure that community providers have another resource to troubleshoot issues related to GATA, and so they can partner with the state effectively. So with that, I will pass it to the GATU team, right, Sebastian? Yeah, okay. I'll pass it to the GATU team and they can share more. Thanks for being here.
Okay, good morning. Hi, my name is Kira Rogers, everyone. I am the director of the GATU team. I will let everyone else do their introductions as well, but I do see, I think, are we starting with Courtney? Are we going to start with Courtney here?
Good morning, Courtney Jackson, GOT2 manager on the GOT2 team.
Next, we have Adriana.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Want to make sure you're hearing me. For some reason, I can't get my camera going, but I am here. Thank you so much for having us. I am the program delivery manager for the Get You.
Perfect, thank you. And next we have Megan.
Good morning, everyone. I am Megan Pirock, and I am the Fiscal and Audit Manager with the Grant Accountability and Transparency Unit.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And so just little brief introductions for all of us, but we will certainly mention more about the work that we are doing as we go through the rest of this presentation for you this morning. We can go to the next slide, please. So for today's agenda for us, we're really going to talk about, like, just briefly talk about some of these things. We do not have nearly enough time to go through every possible thing that we've been working on over the past couple of months, but we will certainly touch on it here. So we're going to talk about some proposed changes to uniform guidance. I know all of our favorite subject matters right now, like everybody's so excited about this. Yay. And then we're going to talk about GATA 101, just giving you some basics here. We're also going to talk about getting like readiness for the state of Illinois grants, making sure that we can explain some of these things more in detail for you, especially when it comes to registering like in the GATA portal, accessing GATA and the UNA grants system, making sure that we can touch on the qualified status for the grant awards, as well as finding grant opportunities, different NOFOs. We're also going to talk about applying for funding. And then we also want to be sure to hit on reading, referencing, and understanding the grant terms and conditions. We will then begin to talk about some revisions to audit thresholds, and then we're going to leave you with some learning resources toward the end. Okay, next slide, please. So let's talk about our favorite subject of the entire year. So this is, we can go to the next slide as well. We're really going to talk about uniform guidance, but mainly just, again, very brief, basic overview. We just do not have enough time to go into all of it. So I'll give you just some short snapshots and tidbits. So the proposed changes did come out this summer. I'm sure you all have heard of it. And what we had to do as the GATU team was to make sure that we could go through and review word for word every single thing, line by line, in terms of what these proposed changes were going to look like. We had a few things that we had to make sure we could have our eyes on. First, we wanted to monitor whether or not there was going to be any change or impact to our systems in general, right? Like statewide systems. We also had to make sure that we could tell if there was going to be a difference with what's happening with GATA as, you know, as GATA legislation as a whole. We also wanted to see if there were going to be any impacts to like our state agencies and any partners that you might partner with. So we had a lot to review, and I honestly think that's where I got a few new gray hairs from, was from that week. And so, but our team, I have to really take my hat off to the GATU team, because we were really able to get in it and dive in there and make sure that we could not only communicate with not only our team, but also our legal team to ensure that we were really looking at everything and monitoring everything for you. The proposed comments, or the proposed changes were available for everyone to make comments on. Whoever wanted to make comments, they could. And so we did receive comments from our agencies. We also made comments, and then we were able to submit everything to the governor's office for them to decide how they wanted to submit comments from there. The comment period did close 3 days ago. And we wanted to make sure that we looked at all of these things, mainly because GATA legislation for the state of Illinois closely mirrors 2 CFR 200, very closely mirrors, and that's intentional. And so we want to make sure that we could have conversations about and have some information to share with others too, about whether or not that we would see, if these changes were to go through, how would that impact how the state of Illinois mirrors 2 CFR 200. And then we also had conversations about whether or not we need to decouple from some of the things that, for instance, we have always seen on our books, but do we need to now think about changing some of those things if federal legislation changes, were to really take effect? So we had a lot to consider here. Again, not enough time to go through all of this, but if you do have other specific questions, you can definitely reach out to us and we can touch more on those. And so just this last bullet point here, during our state of Illinois legislative process, there was language added to GATA to give space to deviate from 2 CFR 200, but that is a very complex, and I mean very complex, situation that we have to really be careful about, because it impacts not just one or two agencies, it impacts everybody. So, but again, we're still having discussions about this. So nothing is set in stone yet. We're just preparing and really bracing for impact here. Okay, next slide, please. So just a little bit about GATA 101. You will be quizzed on this later. I'm just kidding. You won't. You won't be quizzed on it later. But just so that you are all aware, in Illinois, we rely heavily on grants. And so grants basically help us to build and repair our statewide roads and infrastructure. And the grants also, these grant agreements with community-based organizations, with nonprofits, not-for-profits, and others, they basically are like helping us to carry out the services for the public, right, on behalf of the state of Illinois. So grantees will deliver these essential services to the most vulnerable citizens throughout the whole state, including like development of children. And then also we have grantees who will provide training and skill development for those who are entering the workforce, lots of workforce development, those who are adapting to the workforce. So Illinois' program and services, we our the services that we have, they're directly related to the success of its grantees, which is why we spend so much time working with grants, and we spend so much time working with our agencies to make sure that this information that is needed can be given to the grantees. Next slide, please. So there are a few drivers of GATA legislation that I just want to make sure we talk about here. And again, there's so much more to cover, but we just don't have nearly enough time for all that. So for human service grantees, they basically demanded that where this legislation came from basically is what I'm setting up for you. But human service grantees demanded consistent, federally compliant requirements for all grants, regardless of funding sources or organization type. So in order to simplify the processes for making sure that this could all be done in the most transparent way, most uniform way, and to remove some of these redundancies, GATA legislation had to be put in place. So simultaneously, there was some publicized grant fraud like NRIs and inadequate oversight of public funds. They drove to this enactment of the GATA legislation. And so this was another way that the state of Illinois wanted to make sure that we could, again, have the most uniform, the most transparent, and way of getting things done. So GATA became law under Governor Pat Quinn in 2014, and sunset removed in 2018 Public Act 1, well, you can see it here, but Public Act 100 0676. And so now we have to talk about like uniform guidance, which is also, again, we closely mirror to CFR 200. That went into effect in 2014. And then also the timing, it led to the perception that GATA established the current grant rules that we see. The timing of all of this really kind of made it seem like this led to GATA. And so regardless of how it happened, we have actually seen how necessary it has been over the years for us to have GATA legislation in place, making sure that we all can understand like the direction that it needs to go as far as accountability across the state. We also wanted to make sure that we could help others as well as our agencies and grantees to understand the different requirements that must be in place in order to make sure that we can keep eyes on not only all of the grant funding that's going through the state, but we also wanted to make sure we could keep eyes on how to make sure that things are as transparent and open and available for everyone. So GATA adopts the federal requirements for all state-issued awards, driving transparency and accountability for all public funds. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to get into the grant making process, and I'm actually going to pass this one to Courtney. And so Courtney, I will let you take it from here.
Great, thank you so much. So as Kira said, GATA was as a direct result of what the grantee community wanted to have a more streamlined process. It mirrors the federal requirements at 2 CFR 200. So the whole goal was to strengthen our grant making programs following that 2 CFR 200 guidance through uniform processes and templates. GATA resulted in the development of a uniform process for applicants and grantees, and that goes all the way through registration, pre-award, award, and post-award. In addition, statewide uniform templates were established for state awarding agencies and applicants, grantees alike. We have the uniform grant application, uniform budget template, a uniform grant agreement, for example, of some templates that are out there and available and utilized by all state awarding agencies. And the uniform grant application is a requirement during that application process. In addition, to streamline the process and reduce redundancy, we put in together a process for the internal control questionnaire, the indirect cost rate election system, and the audit report review process, where the grantee does this once and it's available centrally to all state awarding agencies. This helped reduce that redundancy for the grantees that receive awards from multiple state agencies. They were able to do a one and done, and everybody has access to the same information. Next slide, please. Adriana, I'm going to pass it over to you.
All right, thank you. For whenever we think about grants, we need to understand that there is a grant life cycle, that all grants basically follow the same type of roadmap. All of our grants start with the pre-award phase, which is knowing what opportunities are being posted. Am I eligible to apply for those opportunities? Making sure that I understand the requirements that are put forth within that opportunity, and that my entity is able and willing to comply with those requirements, and that I even have the capacity for that. So part of the pre-award phase is not only for as a state agency for us to post the opportunity, but it's also for grantees to learn about what opportunities are out there, what type of money is available to you for you to provide services within your community. So part of the award phase, or I'm sorry, the pre-award phase is submitting and complying with the opportunity in itself. Then as we get into once you submit the application, many times we are left wondering with what's next. What am I supposed to be waiting for? How should I prepare? Will I be denied the opportunity for this grant, or will I win this grant? Anytime that time period sometimes takes as long as a couple of weeks to maybe a full month. So after that, the next phase is the award phase. Within that award phase, that's where you receive notification of did I receive this grant, or even notification of you did receive it, congratulations. Now we start with the uniform grant agreement. So the uniform grant agreement, just as Courtney stated, is one of the items that was developed by the GOMB Get You team to create a uniform template for all of us to know what are the basic requirements for that program. What did I say I was going to do are all part of the exhibits. And then parts 2 and 3 are specific items that are added by the agency awarding that program, that are specific conditions that maybe were even pushed down from the federal award. This is one where people are very excited about, because you know that you are going to receive this grant to do what you said you were going to do in the application phase, or that pre-award phase. The part that sometimes we get so excited about work and we tend to forget is the post-award. The post-award comes when your period of performance is near its end, or about to close, where you need to summarize everything that you did within that program, within that period of performance. How did I use these funds? What change did I see? What in my proposal, what I said I was going to do, did it work out? Did things end up happening the way that I was expecting it to? All of that is part of that closeout report. And then, of course, there is that audit part that always comes after, and sometimes even during, depending on the length of your period of performance. Next slide, please. So as I was going through all of those phases, within that pre-award phase, there's a lot of information that needs to be gathered before we are even thinking about applying. And all of this has to do with going back into the GATA grantee portal. So it is a site that you may be very familiar with, where this is where you would be not only completing the necessary information that is required for compliance. All of the necessary information sometimes even comes from outside of the GATA grantee portal, like the Secretary of State, making sure that you're registered within the Secretary of State, making sure that you have your SAM.gov compliance, that you are registered within SAM.gov, and that you have your established UEI number. And a very tricky part with the SAM.gov is when we are registering, sometimes we want to say that we want it private, meaning that we don't want anybody else to be able to see our information. As we could understand that, but one of the things that ends up happening is when you mark that that part private, it's a very small checkbox. The thing that happens is that the communication between SAM.gov and the GATA grantee portal, meaning our site, they won't communicate. So you may say, wait, I'm registered in SAM.gov. I have met all compliance. Why does my GATA grantee site say that my SAM.gov is missing? The one of the reasons may be is that you checked that box. So a recommendation for that checkbox, and I'm really getting into the weeds here, but I'm slowing down for this part because it becomes a very big issue when you are in a hurry and you want to submit your application. So if you still want to keep it private, that's fine, but you must not check that box until at least 48 to let the systems communicate with each other, and then you could log back into SAM.gov 48 hours later, and then go ahead and press that private, or leave it for public view. And the tricky part about the public view is you may think that anyone can just come in and look up your agency. Anyone who has access to SAM.gov needs to be a registered user. And typically registered users are using it for their own programs. They're not necessarily looking in and trying to find other grants or other entities. So it's not just information that would be readily available. I have seen a couple questions come up. So Sebastian, I'm asking you, do we want to pause and see if I can questions, or do you want us to wait until the end?
We can go through a couple of them right now if you would like. So I see
Okay.
Kendra has first question in the chat. So she asked, this framework would apply to nonprofit grantees, correct? And then will this
Yes.
also have a central reporting system for harm done by agencies rather than having to navigate an unclear method through a board of directors?
Yes. So this is the centralized site. And by registering in the GATA grantee portal, you are basically opening the door for you to apply for within any state agency that has an opportunity posted.
Awesome. And then Nora asks, our nonprofit SAM/GATA has to be updated this fall. Is there a place where we can go ahead and do this update?
Yes, so the SAM.gov registration is based on the time frame that you submitted your first rent registration. So in other words, it's different for everyone. What is recommended is that there is typically a SAM.gov individual that is designated for your entity that would have access to this. So you may be asking, well, I don't know who that is. So you may need to send something within your agency to ask who is the person that manages the SAM.gov for your entity. Sometimes it is a fiscal person, somebody in the finance department that is the person in charge. But and we necessarily wouldn't know that. That should be an internal conversation within your entity.
Got it. And then Maria asked a couple questions on privacy. Can the privacy glitch be fixed? And then what is the point of the privacy feature?
Yeah, so the privacy was actually created from sam.gov. And the point of it is that anyone could not look up your entity even if they are rent registered. The part of the glitch, as someone stated, it's not a glitch. Is if it is private, then the communication between the systems, the GATA grantee portal, and SAM is cut off. So it needs to be marked public in order for the API system to talk to each other. And it is just the way that our process is. Any systems that communicate with sam.gov would require that direct communication. So like I said, there are some workarounds. Part of it is you leave it open until the two systems talk. Once they talk, you could then go back and press it private if the privacy is something that you are very concerned about. But as far as anything else goes, it is not something that is a glitch that wasn't considered.
Got it. And then last question before we move on, and I'll ask folks to hold any other questions till the very end of the PowerPoint. But Jennifer asked, I'm new and failed to recertify by the deadline. What do we need to do now?
Yeah, so there was also the question about other registrations. So once you renew your registration in sam.gov, you really don't need to do anything else within sam.gov. What is recommended in the GATA grantee portal is that you periodically log into the GATA grantee portal for your entity, and you make sure that all of the pre-qualification requirements are in good standing. If anything is not in good standing, the system itself will notify you and tell you, hey, this is not in good standing, but there's a little help button there. When you click the help button, it will navigate you or assist you with the steps that are needed to bring you back into good standing.
Awesome. Thank you, Adriana.
All right, and then the next slide, please. So I did talk about the award process and on all of the steps that are part of this. This is just a little bit more detail on what I went through with the grant life cycle. For this part here, we were talking about the grant and application, which is part of the pre-award, and then the award process. So you would get a notification from the entity that you applied from to let you know you have been approved to move into the next phase, which is the award phase. So there are different steps that take place within the any communication from your awarding agency that is specific, and they will include that in their letter. And the next slide. So then here we are talking about more in the continuation phase, where we are talking about the pre-award qualifications, making sure that all of that is you have met and are in good standing, that you have completed the ICQ internal control questionnaire for the current fiscal year that you are going to receive those funds. So for that, you would complete all of the questions that are being asked. You would click on submit, so then it would be notifying the cognizant agency to review your responses, and any specific conditions that are generated from your responses would be added to the uniform grant agreement. When you receive the NOSA, that will include any and all specific conditions generated from not only the ICQ, but also the programmatic risk assessment that your agency would be doing for your program. So then once agreements are signed, the program has started. There is a compliance that is part of that programmatic responsibilities, and all of that includes reporting. You're reporting on the performance that you're doing with those funds, and also the finance, your invoices for reimbursement of any of the expenditures that you have made. And for the next slide, I think we're back to Courtney.
Thank you, Adriana. So how does an entity get ready for a state of Illinois grants? First thing that you want to do is get to know our GATA grantee portal. There's a screenshot of it here for visualization, and you will see that there's the option to sign to the GATA grantee portal, unit grants, which is our grant management system that we're implementing on a statewide basis for all of our state awarding agencies. If you have never registered a personal account with the GATA grantee portal, you will create that or select that create account button, and it will walk you through how to set up a username and password, so that way you can get access in the GATA grantee portal. Once you are signed into the grantee portal and you have access, you will need to either associate your personal registration with a current registered organization in the grantee portal, or you will set up a whole new grantee registration for your entity or your organization. If you forgot your password, you forgot your username, go through the process of help, getting your password reset, recovering your username, and that way you're not creating a duplicate username and password. That does not make things quicker. It actually causes, in the end, more work and more confusion. So just a few things about getting registered and set up. If you have questions about accessing the grantee portal, those can be sent to the omb.gata@illinois.gov email address, and we will help walk you through that. If it comes to a point where it becomes a Department of Innovation and Technology problem, or State of Illinois do it, we will transfer you over, get you over to them, but we do have a few troubleshooting options we can go through with you before you have to go with that route. We are happy to help. We have somebody who does this all day, every day, and this is very, very common, and so happy to help walk people through, oh, I forgot my password, where do I go? We're happy to do that for you. Once you do get signed in, you will see on this page also, I'm sorry, there is a grantee portal frequently asked questions. We also have a new user guide on how to do that. Those are all linked at the end of this presentation. So we do have all of those things available to you to help kind of walk through this process and make it as easy and as smooth as possible. Next slide, please. Once you are in and you need to register your organization, it's a one and done. You set it up, you have to provide basic information to establish that registration. We want your entity's name, physical address, your FEIN, your SAM.gov UEI, which is a unique entity identifier. We need to know what type of organization that you are. Who is the primary email that should receive notifications on this account? What is the primary phone number? Do you have a Secretary of State file ID? If so, add it in here. We will verify that information. And what is your fiscal year end date? This is important. This will help with our with the creation of the audit report review process for your indirect cost rate elections, all sorts of things. Then you must answer one question. Does the organization have 2 or more years experience with Illinois grants? And it's a yes or no. Once you enter this information and it goes through, we start making what we call calls to SAM.gov. We call the Secretary of State, and this is all automated. We don't actually make phone calls. We call over to their system and say, hey, knock, knock, we have this UEI number, SAM.gov. Is it active? Is it real? Is it just a UEI only? Do they need to do more? And we pull that information back into our system to help you get into your pre-qualification status. So this information is very important. Enter it to the best of your ability. If you make a mistake, again, you can reach out to that omb.gata inbox and we can help walk you through how to get that fixed. Next slide, please. Pre-qualification. There are pre-qualification requirements before you can receive a State of Illinois award. Pre-qualification status is a section within the grantee portal. From that information that you listed in the registration screen, we start to do those pre-qualification checks I was talking about. Once you do that, we'll pull in the status. It will be good, not found, not good, and then it'll be in red. It'll be very clear to you that there are things that need some attention by you or another user in your organization that's registered. When you do see that it's a not good and you need help remediating, select that help button. We provide those helpful links to where you need to go. If it's a SAM.gov issue, your UEI is not pulling through, you need to update. You did check the private box and you don't want to do that anymore. It'll link you to SAM.gov to where you log in and you can do those things. Anything that needs to be fixed at SAM.gov has to be done there. We cannot help you through that process. You'll have to work through SAM.gov and the Federal Service Desk. I do see a question for, I have a username and password with GATA. How do I add an additional user for my organization? That user needs to set up their own username and password with that create account button on the first screen that we showed you. Once they do, they will need the UEI of your organization and they will enter that to try to associate themselves with that grantee portal registration. Then you as the user that already has access will go in and you can accept their request to join. All user access is handled by the grantee organization themselves. We do not add or you remove users. That is all handled internally by your organization. We can walk you through the steps of how to do so, but the actual steps need to be completed as we do not know the users within your organization and who should or should not be in the system. Next slide, please. So who should have access? Any organization that wants to apply for a State of Illinois grant needs to have that grantee portal set up, grantee portal registration set up. Now, the individuals that need to have access will be determined by that organization. Whenever you set up your account, you will be able to then and link yourself with your grantee organization. You will have the ability to set up to just have access to the grantee portal to navigate pre-qualification requirements, the internal control, questionnaire, the audit process to submit your audits, and the indirect cost rate election system. If a user needs access to UniGrants, our statewide grant management system, and they're going to be filling out the application in that system, they will need access to the grantee account or the grantee registration via the GATA grantee portal. That access is managed within the grantee portal by an existing user in the account. In order to have access, you need to create an account and get a public external or an Illinois.gov account and associate yourself with that appropriate organization in the grantee portal. There are step-by-step instructions available on our website and also linked in this slide deck for you that got a new user guide. I see a couple of questions. What is UNA? So we are implementing a statewide grant management system where the state awarding agencies will post their notice of funding opportunities, and that applying organizations will need to go in and apply. And then they will receive their award information in there. They will do all of their reporting requirements in this statewide grant management system that is titled UniGrants. So that is what UniGrants is. Next slide, please. How to manage user access. Once a user has access to the grantee portal registration for your entity and you log in and scroll all the way down to the bottom of the screen, there's a list of who has access to as a grantee portal user. You can select a name next to that to view that user, and then you can edit that information and you will see their access type as either full, portal only, or UNA only. That is managed by selecting the user next to the username here on the screen, and then you can go in and edit that information. People who do not need access, oh, I'm sorry, if you go to the next screen, it'll actually show. I forgot that was in there. So you select view, it pulls up the user's information. You select edit at the top, and then under application access, there are two checkboxes: have access to the grantee portal and have access to the UniGrants system. You individually within the organization need to determine who has access to what and who needs access to what, but it can be updated at any time. This is how it's set today, and you can never edit it again. You can always go in and edit that information. You can also edit what notifications and alerts that you want to receive. Our system will send out emails nightly of notifications of when your pre-qualification status changes, whenever your ICQ, your internal control questionnaire status changes, receiving audit alerts and notifications, and all those different types of things. You can check what's appropriate for that specific user and what they need to manage and be on top of and be aware of. It was a general overview of the grantee portal and how to get access. Again, there is that new user guide that we have linked a couple of times throughout this presentation in the information. I am going to hand it over to Adriana to go over how to find an opportunity to apply for.
Right. Thank you. If we could go to the next slide. Yeah. So many times you may say, okay, I have followed all the steps. I am registered in sam.gov. I have my UEI, FEN, everything. I go into GATA grantee portal. I have my account. I have the right people that should have access to the various systems. ICQ is already done. Now I'm ready to find opportunities that I could apply for. So where do I find them? You will find them in, and again, there is a hyperlink here, but it would be through the GATA website. And within the GATA website, there is the CSFA, which stands for Catalog of State Financial Assistance. And within that page, there is a click here to browse a list of current funding opportunities. And it's actually that third line. When you click that line, if we go to the next slide, you're going to be able to see all the different opportunities that are posted. Next slide, please. Oh, I did want to say, sorry, we could go back. You could also receive weekly notifications of new opportunities that state agencies post. And by doing that, you would go to the site and click on that subscribe. And the only thing you need to do is just press send to that email, and you will be added to that listserv. It is still encouraged if you are actively looking for opportunities. You don't necessarily have to wait for that weekly list, but you could go to that site. So the next slide will show when you click on the opportunities, you're going to see a list. This is only a screen snip of the list as it was a couple weeks ago. One of the things that we have circled here is where there is a little green box. That means that opportunity is posted in UNA grants. So for those of us that are not familiar with UNA, you should be. This is something that you should actively be aware of and understand that this is going to be the primary place for you to complete the information that is required for the opportunity that you are applying for the grant that you are seeking. So you could see anything that has that GMS box, you will it will take you to the UNA website. Anything that still has a simple hyperlink, like those that are on the page, like the DCEO, the first one, that is where you would be applying, clicking on that and finding the information. And typically those are submitted through either the system that the state agency is using or sometimes just in an email. Next slide, please. So within that, once you click on that green little box, it will take you to this UNA link. And here is where you could find the details regarding that grant opportunity. You will be able to click on apply, and it'll open up that several pages with various questions that you would be submitting within that screen. Or you could even click save, and it'll save it for you to think about, for you to bring back to your to the key stakeholders in your organization to say, hey, this an opportunity for Wendy's Wonderful Kids, this looks like something we're interested in. Should we be applying? Here are the requirements. Here are everything that we need. And you could basically start thinking about your method that you would be, who you need to involve to submit a full application. So next slide. All of this is all part of the UNA system. So the UNA system is not as new as we would think. Many state agencies are and have been posting opportunities in UNA going back to 2019. So quite a few years now. It is now becoming a more common practice with our state agencies. But there are different things that we need to consider when we are applying for and working within the UNA system. One of them is that there are different things where you could save it because the information you're not done with. You want to come back and make changes. You could mark it as complete, meaning I am done with this page. I am moving on to the next pages, or save and continue. I think I'm done. Somebody else from my entity needs to come in here and review it, or whatever. Or maybe you need to find some more answers to a specific question. You could move on. The whole point of this is that saving information within UNA is something that is very important, because it is not similar to an autosave in a Word document or any other type of system. So you must physically click save. And this becomes important in, next slide, please, is that oftentimes we run into questions on, wait, how do I do this? Or what do I do here? It is always a good place for you to seek to apply for, and I'm using apply, but it's actually register. You're creating an account in the Unigrants Zendesk. There is a specific place for you as a grantee where you could find videos, different cheat sheets and things on what to do and how to apply for opportunities. And it's basically more geared towards navigating within the UNA system. So this is the same site that we as state agencies will be using, have been using to navigate on the system from our point of view. The other part here within the UNA Grants Zendesk is that oftentimes there are upcoming trainings that are always available to everyone. As a matter of fact, this week was a whole series starting from Monday that was specifically geared towards grantees. So these sessions are daily 1 hour sessions that are geared towards a specific topic. Like I said, this week was for grantees. So you are a grantee. How do I apply? What should I look for? And there are people that walk you through the different examples of opportunities. So it is a great resource that is highly recommended for you to create an account if you are going to be an active state grantee. So it is, we always are trying to provide resources for that. And I think for this next section, if we could go to the next slide, I think here I am handing it over to Megan.
Yes, thank you, Adriana. Yeah, so I wanted to touch on the audit extension process with the GATA audit requirements. So depending on what audit type might be required to be conducted for an organization based on their expenditures during their fiscal year, there is a deadline that is also applied to that audit type. So if a grantee is required to have a single audit conducted, they must make sure that those audit packages are submitted by the 9-month deadline. And for a financial statement audit, so if it's conducted in accordance with government auditing standards or generally accepted auditing standards, those have a 6-month deadline in the grantee portal. And so with that, revisions, like stated here, revisions were made in late 2024 to the uniform guidance, specifically subpart F to CFR 205.12A1, which now includes language about allowing non-federal entities to request an extension on their single audit when that 9-month timeframe would place an undue burden on the auditee. And so as we adopt that federal guidance, we also adopt that extension language to those state issued awards, so to those financial statement audit requirements as well. So that the extensions are applicable to grantees with a fiscal year beginning on or after October 1st of 2024. And then if the grantee's fiscal year began prior to October 1st of 2024, that audit extension process would not be applicable to that grantee. So we have a process in place in our system in the grantee portal whenever the grantee has an active audit case where they have met that fiscal year. So if their fiscal year began on or after October 1st of 2024, they will now see that there is an extension process out there available for them. Next slide, please. So one of the items that the audit work group determined was how to define undue burden. Since it wasn't defined by the feds within the uniform guidance, we wanted to make sure that we had a definition in place to, follow as the agencies are reviewing those extension requests. So it was determined that an undue burden would be considered an unforeseen event that disrupts an organization's operations beyond their control. And that event can impose significant challenges, which limits the grantee's ability to function effectively. They also determined that it would need to be a substantial or an unjust obstacle that could not have been avoided or overcome by the grantee or its auditor through planning and reasonable diligence. Next slide, please. And then the work group also came up with some examples, which, like stated, they include but are not limited to those natural disasters, pandemics, national emergencies, cyber attacks, server crashes, property destruction, and then finally auditor issues that are out of a grantee's control, like some examples provided there. Next slide, please. So I just provided some high-level screenshots of what that audit extension process would look like if your audit case does have that applicable fiscal year end. So if your audit period began on or after October 1st of 2024, you would now see that request an extension button available in the top right corner of the audit case. I want to mention that the extensions, the work group determined that those should be submitted within 60 days of that audit package submission deadline date, but those extensions are available up until that audit package submission deadline date. So although it's requested that they be submitted prior to, it is available up until that deadline date. After that deadline date, you would no longer be able to submit that extension request within the system and follow that process. So you just want to make sure that if you have met that undue burden and you want to make sure that an extension request is submitted, that you are doing it by that deadline date that is currently listed within the system. Next slide, please. And then finally, this is just what a grantee would see on their screen if they were to proceed with submitting an extension request. So we provide the language regarding the extension, the undue burden definition, as well as the process documents that are available for review. And then there's also some language regarding single audits, since those are to be approved by the federal agency, since that is a federal requirement for those single audits. And then finally, the fields that are to be completed and submitted by the grantee in their extension requests. So the first is that justification for their audit package submission, which is just how those external events have hindered your organization's ability to meet that original audit package submission deadline date, your proposed due date for your audit package submission. So the maximum time that the work group agreed upon was that it could be 3 months beyond the normal due date. So you can select any date up to 3 months beyond it. And then the corrective action plan, which is just how your organization plans to make sure that future audit packages will be submitted timely. And then finally, an audit engagement letter, which is a required field. And that's just attaching your engagement letter that is received from your audit firm, which should be signed at least 3 months prior to your fiscal year end date to show that you were engaged with your firm to be conducting that audit. So then you would enter in your name and your title and you would submit that request, and that then gets passed along to your cognizant agency for audit, who would then review the extension request and determine if they approve, if they need to return, or if they choose to deny the extension request. So if it is approved by your cognizant agency, they can select whether they agree to that proposed deadline date that you provided, or if there would be another date that is less than the 3 months, that would be provided with their approval. But once they have approved, then your deadline dates in the system would be updated to reflect that applicable deadline that was given. If it's returned for a missing item, say the corrective action plan wasn't sufficient enough, the COG agency can return that back to you, where you can then correct it and resubmit it. and then it would be passed along to the COG agency again for review. Or if it is denied, then you'll receive the denial and no further extension requests will be allowed to be submitted in the system. But if there's any questions you have regarding that extension, you can always reach out to your cognizant agency for further information if further clarification would be needed with that process. But those process documents, including just the high level overview of it, the requirements, the grantee instructions, or the agency's instructions, if you are looking for those, they are all available on our GATA website underneath the audit tab. So you can always find those out there on our website as well. And next slide. I think I passed this back on over to Kira.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Megan. So I know we covered a lot of information today, but again, these are requirements. And so the joke that we have is that you gotta do it, GATA, you gotta do it. And so grantees, when you are successful, and when you are partners, right? Like so when you are actually successful and you're able to carry out these programs and services, we all win. That's what that means, right? So state agencies, they need your expertise and your value and your contributions. Oh, sorry. Sorry. You need your expertise, your values, your contributions to carry out their missions. They cannot do this work without you. And so GATU, we are here to help standardize some frameworks, answer as many questions as we can, just so that Illinois can do what is required by both federal and state mandates. And so we appreciate partnerships with Forefront and Illinois Partners for Human Services. We really, for basically creating these connections to drive this meaningful work, to drive these meaningful improvements. We really appreciate that. And again, we all got to do it. So that's where we are in life. You go next slide, please. So as we promised, we do want to leave you with a few bits of resources and information. So the first thing you will see, we have a course that is live. It is free 99 for you. Anybody can go in and register for this, but it's called Navigating the Life Cycle of a Grant. So and this is available on our website. And so you can go in and register. And when you get ready to register for this, because of the platform that it's currently on, it's going to look like that you have to like pay for something, but you don't. It's just set up that way, but the payment is still free. It's still 0.00. But anyway, this takes you through the entire process of the life cycle of a grant. This GATU team has been incredible in that they prepared so much information for you. They give you ways to basically go in and pick and choose which parts of the life cycle you want to study and learn about. And again, they gave you free resources for that. One thing I will tell you is if you do decide to register for this course and you decide to complete the entire course, we really truly would love your feedback on this. You will get a certificate of completion, and this certificate makes you one of the best people in the state of Illinois, and it means you get to brag about how cool you are. So that's what the purpose is of having the certificate. But what we also just really appreciate, and can somebody put the website in the chat? Someone's asking where they can access the course. So again, it's free for anyone who wants to register and sign up for this. We also have a few other resources for you on our website, along with some different manuals, things like that. So again, whether you are applying for a grant for the first time or you've managed several awards, there is still something that you will find useful and helpful in this course when you go and click on this, and when you register for this. So we'll help you we just want to share those useful tips and help you avoid some common pitfalls as well. And any updates that do occur, we will definitely make sure to keep our trainings updated for you as well. And we'll also put some notifications of things like that on our website too. Let's see. Can you go to the next slide for us, please? Okay, other resources for you here. There's link to the Unigrants Zendesk, as well as like the GATA website itself. We also have the GATA grantee portal, the grantee access guide, and again the training course, navigating the life cycle of a grant. So you do have these resources available to you right here. There are a few other things that are on our website too. And can you go to the next slide for us? Cool. So now, we just want to see if you do have any additional questions that we haven't touched on. I don't know how much time we have left for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Kira. Well, first of all, I want to rate that GATA joke a 7 out of 10. That's my rating, sorry. But really appreciate you guys, the whole GATA team, for being here this morning. For first-time grantees, this can be a very overwhelming process, and so this is a great walkthrough. Reminder for folks, this training and all the links will be sent to you guys in a follow-up. And it'll be accessible whenever you guys need it. So just want to flag that for everyone. And then if folks have any questions, feel free right now to drop them in the chat, and either Forefront or the GAT2 team can try and answer them in the remaining few minutes that we have.
Okay, I do see a comment in the chat saying that I guess the link is either broken or it's not working. We can put a new link for you in the chat if one of our team members can.
Was that for the training?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm. Here's the link directly into navigating the life cycle of a grant.
Yeah. And then Emily, we'll just stay on this slide. Cool. Well, do
Here's
folks
our
have any other? Mhm.
You're okay. I'm also going to share our general GATA homepage, where if you toggle across the top, there's a training tab that you can also access more information there. In addition to the audit information, indirect costs, general grantee links for pre-qualification, etc.
Thank you, Courtney. Good question, Grace. So Forefront is the state's association for nonprofits and grant makers. So we are a nonprofit ourselves. And we work to uplift nonprofits and grant makers in Illinois, the challenges they're facing. Um, one issue that folks have been having is just sort of learning about GATA, which is why we had this training. And then I believe Lauren dropped off the Zoom call, but Illinois Partners is also a statewide association, and they advocate for providers in the health human services space. So free and travel clinics, folks who cover Medicaid and Medicare, orgs like that. So we hosted this webinar today with the GAT2 team. And then I am being pinged that we only have 2 more minutes left. Um, so any last questions from folks?
There's a question from Grace in the chat. Can someone explain again what Forefront and Illinois Partners are?
Yeah, just answered that one. Um, cool. Well, if not, again, I will drop my email in the chat in a second, but we'll follow up as well. Really just big thank you to the whole GAT2 team for being here this morning, and explaining all of this in detail. As a reminder again, folks, that we'll follow up with all of this information in a follow-up email, hopefully before the end of the week, if not early next week. And then if there are any questions for the Forefront team, feel free to reach out to me. That's my email at the very end of the slide right there. Um, we offer a variety of trainings, not just on GATA, but on advocacy and more so. So feel free to reach out to me anytime. And then with that, for folks in Northern Illinois, be safe with the air quality. It's not looking too good for us. And for everyone across the state, thanks for being here. Have a great rest of your week. And we will follow up with the links as well. So thank you again.
Thank you.